Hi, everybody. This is going to be our Beyond High School Night video. I have myself and Mr. Kessie here to talk about so many different options for Beyond High School and getting in depth on some of those topics. And to start us off, this is us. So I, again, am Carissa Kingsbury. I do the College of Career Readiness and Aspire at our high school. And
I'm Darren Kessie. I'm one of the counselors here at Kirk County High School. So there's three of us. There's Mrs. Kasperger, myself, and our new counselor, Brittany Haddon. And so we're available for students for like personal visits. We can talk to you guys about school stuff, family stuff. We also do a lot of support with Carissa in her role with Aspire and college and beyond college work, those kind of questions. So we're here for that as well.
Yeah, so Mr. Kessie is going to help me go through some of these slides. We're going to talk about different topics and give some of his insight as well as mine. So first, what we have to talk about is the Future Center and Aspire. So that is what I do here at the high school. The Future Center is attached to the library. So if you haven't seen it, it's the side with the big windows. One of the things we do in there is Aspire. So what Aspire means is access to student programs in reach of everyone. Some of the things that we do within Aspire are college and career searches, financial aid application help, scholarships, trade school application help, mentoring and guidance. And we do some field trips like you can see in this photo. We went to U of O a couple of years ago and did a fun college visit. You can find our Future Center website at that little link right there. And you can just go to our high school website as well. Under the counseling tab, you'll see Future Center.
So can I have a question on that?
Yes.
Can any student can do this? Is this only certain grade levels, or how does that work for students?
Yeah, so technically any grade level can be a part of Aspire. We usually focus on junior and senior students for planning, because that's when some of those after high school plans start, making questions for us in the sense of like, what do I want to do? Where do I want to go? How do I do that? So we start reaching out junior year and then really get into it senior year, but we're definitely open to talking with freshmen and sophomore, because sometimes it's good to get an idea of like what classes we could be taking at the high school in hopes of learning about what we're interested in. If you just don't know what you want to do, maybe you really know what you want to do. Really, any student of any grade level can get help from us.
Okay.
Yeah. Next, Aspire mentoring. So what this is something within Aspire, and that is like matching students with a mentor that can help them with their high school goals. So Aspire is a mentorship program that matches adult volunteer mentors with students to help them meet their education and training goals beyond high school. Some of the ways that they can help are through meeting with a mentor each month, setting goals to further your education, planning how to reach those goals, and just planning your future beyond with your education and training. Next, so sometimes it's hard to know what you want to do after high school, and there's a lot of different options, and sometimes it's just hard to know how to find that out if you just don't have an idea of what you're really wanting to do. One of the really cool ways is through this website called My Next Move. So what My Next Move is a website that gives information into careers that you may already be interested in with the outlook of what this career has in the future. So it might show like the growth opportunity for that position or like the pay scale. And it also can give some questionnaires about what type of work that you might be interested in. And it can suggest some careers based on that, based on your interests and educational goals. And that is that website right there. So it's mynextmove.org. And we kind of got a little picture of what that website looks like once you get there. So in that bottom right-hand corner of that picture, it shows, tell us what you like to do. And that's that spot where you can go to answer some questions like, how much do you like carpentry, or do you like working with people? Many different options so that you can kind of get a better idea of what you might be interested in and some of the careers that might fit your interests.
So what if it's a student who's not really sure yet? Like, let's see, I think sometimes with students, they think that, oh, my friends already kind of know what they want to do. What if you're a student who doesn't really have an idea yet? Like, how can this help them?
Yeah, and that's why these are great, because sometimes when you just don't know, this comes up with questions to help you figure that out. So it has those specific questions. Are you hands-on? Are you personable? Do you like to work on your own in a team? So it has lots of different questions. And the nice part about that is if you just don't know, it'll help narrow down some of those ideas and you can look into them. And if you're like, nope, I could never do that. Or yeah, that actually looks great. So it's just a good starting point to get an idea idea of what you're interested in. And then later on, you could talk to like myself or Mr. Kessie, one of the counselors, about a career option you might be interested in. And we can look at different ways like, hey, let's try a CTE class, or let's do a job shadow. Some of those next steps after figuring out what you might be interested in.
Do you find that is it pretty normal for students to kind of change their mind? Like they might say, I want to do this. And by the time, like if you start working them as a sophomore, do you see kids change their mind quite a bit? How does that usually work?
Yeah, I think that it's normal to change your mind, sometimes often, and maybe you know exactly what you want, or maybe you don't, and you just need some options. So I've worked with students who have had, 5 very different ideas. And after going through this process, we've kind of narrowed it down to, oh, I don't think I can see myself doing that. Oh, I think maybe. The FAFSA and the ORSA. So if you plan to go to like a university, a community college, a trade school that accepts financial aid, or maybe even a vocational school like beauty school, these applications are for financial aid. So what the FAFSA is before each year you apply for these federal grants, work study, or student loans through the free application for federal student aid. The colleges or schools that you plan to go to use this FAFSA to determine your financial eligibility for these grants and loans and things like that. Many states and colleges use the FAFSA towards their financial aid. And after you apply to the schools and you are admitted, these applications will go to those schools, and then you can get a financial aid report and kind of determine how much assistance you would get. This is really helpful in the sense of if you want to go to school, you can find out if you might need some extra income through scholarships that you can apply for, find out how much of your school will be paid for, so you can decide if you want to go to like a community college or a university. So this is just a great way to kind of get an idea of what your financial status will be when you go to school. And many scholarships require you to fill this out to be able to be eligible for those scholarships, even our local ones. Doesn't mean that you're not going to get STIP if your parents make too much money or if your parents make too little. This is just a way for them to get an idea of where you're at for starting. So the difference between the FAFSA and the ORSA. So the ORSA is for students who are undocumented in Oregon that might be, working on their residency or in the process of that. So it allows them to still get financial aid even if they're in the process of becoming a U.S. citizen. And the FAFSA is just for people who are a U.S. citizen in their other separate federal financial aid application. So below it shows all the things you need. And you can even make an appointment with us and we can help you walk through how to apply for these if you need more assistance.
So Carissa, on that part there, example, if you do qualify for federal aid, what does that generally look like? Is it loans? Is it grants? Like, how does that work for a typical student?
Yeah, so what grants are is money that is determined based on your financial eligibility on this FAFSA application. That's money that you don't have to pay back based on your financial need. A work study is something that you can qualify for through this FAFSA application based on income as well. And it's basically just like a job opportunity within the school you may be going to, an opportunity for work to go towards your financial aid. And let's see, and loans. So loans are things that we try to avoid if we can. Sometimes it's hard, but the more we can do to put those off, the better. Those are some loans that you can borrow money from the FAFSA fund, like the government, and you then have to pay back with interest. So then you want to try to avoid those as long as possible. So then that way you're set up for success once you graduate, because you can keep racking up these loans. And at the end, you have this big bill with interest that you don't want to have to pay back. So the longer you can wait, the better. And so that's why it's good to fill these out so you can know where you're at. And if you don't qualify for free money and you have to take out student loans, you can put a little more effort into some scholarships and really work to try to keep that as low as possible for success after high school. Next, we're going to talk about applying for colleges. So on the left here, we have the Oregon Public University undergraduate admissions requirements. So that's a lot of words, but basically what these are the standards for all the public universities in Oregon that are not community colleges. And it talks about their GPA requirements, their application additional materials, if they require the SAT or ACT, some priority application deadlines, which what that means, early and priority means basically you can apply early and they can determine whether you are admitted in their school early. Sometimes it allows you to get your fee to apply waived, and sometimes it just means that you get notified before people who apply at the regular application deadline. So universities do have specific deadlines for their applications. Community college usually is a rolling deadline. For these ones, when you start in the fall, they have specific deadlines, as well as their own personal scholarship priority deadlines. So they have their own scholarships that you can apply for. Some of them are automatic when you apply to their school that you get put into those, but some of them have a separate application. So you want to make sure you're looking at those. Mr. Kessie can probably say a little bit to this, but when you're applying to these schools, there are like high school graduation requirements for you to have to be able to get into these schools. So at the top of that, it says like 4 English courses, 3 math courses, 3 science. Most of those are the standards for like our graduation requirements, but that's something definitely to look at if you're planning to be applying to a university. Would you say?
Yeah, so like I think probably the biggest thing for a 4-year college, if you look up there on the course requirements, you have three math credits is what we require for graduation at the high school too. Pretty much all of the public universities and private universities want you to have through Algebra 2 for your math. So at least Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2 is kind of a prerequisite because they set that up in order for you to be able to be successful for those college level courses. If you don't have Algebra 2, for example, what some students will do is they'll go to community college. They might brush up on the math skills that they're lacking and then transfer over to a 4-year college if they're pursuing a bachelor's degree. One of the things that you notice down there at the bottom on the side there, it talks about a scholarship priority date. I think one thing that is fairly common is that the public universities don't necessarily have as many scholarships available for students that are tied to the college. There's always some, but there's usually a larger pool of students. One advantage of private colleges is they have a lot more private scholarships that they can offer students. So what we've found a lot of times is that students can attend a private Oregon university for almost the same cost that it costs them to go to, like, for example, Oregon State or University of Oregon, because those private universities are able to offer a lot more scholarships for our students. So don't let that limit you. I think you can afford to go to a private college because a lot of times with the scholarships that they can offer you, it can be very comparable. So.
Yeah, that's really true. Actually, we a couple of years ago went on a field trip over to, it's now called Bushnell, but it was called Northwest Christian before. And they were telling us about how they have all these different scholarships for students because of their unique ability with some of their scholarship donors. So you can get, scholarships for visiting the school. They even rent part of their property that all the money they make from that goes into scholarships for students. So that is kind of a cool thing. And sometimes you really can actually spend the same, if not less, at a private school than at a public university because they do have some more flexibility in that. And I think that was another good point Mr. Kessie made about the transition. So sometimes, we have these standards for graduation, and sometimes going into a university straight away can be kind of a lot and a big transition in academics. So sometimes it's nice to look at community colleges too. As just a way to get started and get your feet wet and kind of move forward. It doesn't hurt to start at community college. It actually can be cheaper, if not free. And then transferring over and having like 2 years of those credits already done towards your 4-year degree when you transfer to that university. So these are all great things to think about. And if you don't know or you have questions about that, we can always make an appointment and talk about that more. And we'll get a little more in depth about some of that later on in this video. Some of the things to think about, just quick little blurbs, is you can get in. So it's really not as competitive as some students think to get into some of these colleges. There's so many opportunities, and if you have any questions or difficulties applying, we would love to help. It's become more and more accessible each year for students, such as waiving the SAT and ACT tests for students as a requirement to get in. All of the public universities in Oregon are now test optional. Just like it says, you're more than test scores. So colleges care a lot about what you've done in school, and they look for students who have earned strong grades, yes, in challenging courses, but they also try to learn about you in the big picture about what makes you you in and outside of the classroom. So most public universities, like I said, have become test optional. So again, you're in charge. So it's your future and you get to decide like what you're wanting to do. So if you stay focused on what's important to you and what you want to get out of that and the college experience, I think that there is some great opportunities for students to be successful and also to reach their goals that they have. And it can feel like a lot and overwhelming, but it's definitely possible, especially if you ask questions and reach out to people for help. Another part is you are unique. So, you know, you can base your choice of college based on what fits your needs. So like we were talking about earlier, some of the schools that are private, they might be smaller if you're interested in a smaller school. They might look more expensive, but they have more scholarships. Some of these big schools like U of O and some of those other schools, if you're not wanting to be in such a big class and you want it to be smaller and you succeed better in that environment, those are some of the things you want to look at because they might be your #1 school and you love them so much, but you want to look at what's going to be good for you and not just what the school's named. And also looking at what programs you want to study, because not every one of these schools has the same programs. So if you're really focused on, you know, education and you want to go to a school that's good in education, you might look at, well, all of them kind of probably have educational programs. That was a bad example, but maybe you're really interested in business or agriculture. So OSU has a really big ag program that you can look at. So those are some of the things you want to look at when you're interested in a school and you're not just picking it based on like where your friends are going or your favorite school, but more just like what you want to do and what's going to help you be successful. Because you don't want to go there and waste all that time and have it not be for what you wanted to get out of it. Again, you're not in this alone. So families, teachers, friends are great resources. You can discuss your plans about going to college by reaching out to me, Mr. Kessie, one of the counselors, and we can help you look at all that and get more in depth.
So I was going to ask, what would be an advantage of going to, let's say, like one of the larger universities on here, like Oregon State or University of Oregon, or like Portland State? Like, what's an advantage of one of those over maybe like a smaller college like Western Oregon or Eastern Oregon?
I would say like there might be more variety in the courses, and there also might be more opportunities just depending on the school, like for studying abroad or different like club options or just different opportunities based on the specific school. I wouldn't say that any of them, one's better than the other. It all just really depends on what you're interested in. But I think that part of that is like looking at like, again, what's going to give you the best for what you need. So if you're really interested in a school that offers a large variety of internships, so maybe you ask some of those questions, like, do you have internships? Do you have this program? Like, what does this program look like for, you know, having to, you know, do work outside of class? So those are some of the things you want to look at when trying to decide which school to choose. So I would definitely just, you know, focus on what's going to get the best out of it for you and what's going to fit you best. And if you want to be in a bigger school, like maybe you can meet a lot of other people. Like it's definitely those other bigger schools are more diverse. So there's students from all over the US sometimes, and even like out of the country that come to school at those like University of Oregon and Oregon State and like OIT, some of those schools. So you can end up meeting a lot of different people. So I think it's just what you're looking for and what you feel like will help you be successful in those. So next on the list is SAT and ACT. So like we talked about, most Oregon public universities have moved to test optional. That means it's not required for admissions, but there are still testing dates that are available. So at Kirk County, we have multiple SAT dates. Unfortunately, we don't have any ACT dates here at CCHS, but there is one over in Redmond at RPA and also some other schools in Oregon, maybe not Central Oregon, that are offering the ACT. And there's also some Central Oregon schools that are offering the SAT on different days. So on this, we're just going to talk about some terms to know because they're good information and good to know about. So first is dual partnership programs. So earlier we were talking a little bit about the transition to maybe community college first instead of just straight to university. this kind of gives you the best of both worlds. So what this means is that you can attend a community college while also attending a university at the same time. A lot of students will utilize this if they want to do the Oregon Promise that we'll talk about a little later, where you can get your community college paid for, but still be able to talk with the university to help plan your classes for once you transfer over. And it can be really great because you can still live on campus at the university, but go mostly to the community college or vice versa. And it can also be a way for you to be able to not have to live on campus at the university if you want to save some money on dorms. So the dual partnership can be really great. Most Oregon universities do that with many community colleges. So it's not just one community college in that university. It could be 5 or 6 different community colleges in that university. So that can be really helpful. The next one is kind of a cool opportunity for students. So it has many different names. So it could be 4 years for free, Oregon Pathways, or Pell Plus program. So the Oregon public universities that are Western Oregon, Southern Oregon, Portland State, and University of Oregon all have these programs. This is where you can have between, depending on the school, a 3.0 starting or a 3.5 GPA, and financially qualify with the FAFSA to be able to get 4 years of your tuition and fees paid for at a university, which can be really awesome because that's a giant chunk of your tuition that goes towards your financial aid and all of that to not have as much money owed. And it's really just having that GPA and then qualifying financially. So that's why it's really important to fill out the FAFSA. And for these programs, you just have to apply for the school. So if you apply for the school and you have these criteria, they'll let you know if you qualify. If you have questions about those, you can either reach out to me or those schools directly and find out a little bit more information about if you would qualify for those. Any questions on that, Mr. Kessie?
So like the Pell Plus, that's talking about the Pell Grant is one of the grants you can get through the FAFSA.
Yeah, so the Pell Plus, it's basically for all of these, you have to qualify for a Pell Grant of any amount. So that's why filling out that FAFSA to find out if you're Pell eligible, and that's that Pell Grant that you don't have to pay back. It can be at any level, but you just have to qualify for that. So that's why it's important to get that FAFSA done as soon as possible. Okay, so for this next slide, we're going to be talking about transcript requests.
Okay, guys, so when you want to get a transcript, there's lots of reasons why you might need to get one. You might need to get one for a scholarship you're applying for. The college that you're applying for is going to ask you for an official transcript. And so when you need that, you need to come to either the counseling center and fill out a form that Tammy has that you can have her send it directly to the college that you want. If you're doing it for scholarships, she can print those out and then make those available. Usually it takes her either that day or the next to get those complete, so it doesn't take her that long. If you see over here, there's a link that you can actually go to the counseling website, and then you can form fill out a form to get the request and then email it to Tammy as well. So that's an option for you.
Yeah, so this is actually a screenshot of the school website. So if you go to the Kirk County High School website underneath the counseling tab and click transcript request, it'll take you to this page here where, like he said, it shows the transcript release PDF that you can fill out.
So the next thing there you can see on this list is when you, as a senior, one of the big scholarships you fill out is the Osac scholarship. If you're in a personal finance class or AVID class, you've been working on this. That's the one that there's over 600 different scholarships. I think Chris had already mentioned that you can apply for. So they're going to ask you they need your transcript for that as well. You don't do anything other than you request on your Osac scholarship for the counselor at the high school to upload that for you. And so what happens after trimester 1, once we have those grades, then we can verify and upload a transcript for you. So what happens on that is that Chris and I get that list. We see all the students who have applied for Osac, and so we make sure that we upload all those transcripts to their site. That's something that we take care of for you.
Yeah, and on the Oregon Promise side of that, which is also on the Osac, the OregonStudentAid.gov website, it asks you to have your school verify your GPA. That's one that we wait a little bit longer in the year, probably around the end of the second trimester. If you aren't graduating early is when we start to approve those. So if you're wondering why that Oregon Promise side is taking a little bit longer, that's why.
All right, and then if you notice down here on the third bullet, it's request a COCC transcript. And so if you click on that link, it'll kick you over to COCC. That is true for all of the classes that you took for dual enrollment here at the high school. We cannot upload or send your college transcript. In fact, we don't even have access to that. We only have access to your high school transcript, the classes that you've taken here at Kirk County High School. Any college credit that you've earned through that college, you have to request that transcript from the specific college. So we can definitely help you with that process, because it is a little bit of takes a little bit of time to navigate the different colleges and the websites, but it's all, once you figure out how to do it, it's all pretty much the same way. You have an ID through that college. You can look it up through the college, and then once you get it, you can request a transcript.
Yeah, and if you don't know which classes that you took and which ones were college credit or where that was through, you can let us know and we can help you look that up, because we do have multiple classes that are offered for college credit through multiple colleges. So sometimes it can be hard to know which one, but we can definitely help you with that if you're not sure.
Yeah, and then just to add on to that, you definitely don't want to wait till you graduate to do that. That's just something you're going to want to take care of between now and graduation. Believe me, your parents will, if you don't take care of it, it's going to be a big stressor for your parents too. So you can take the time now. We can help you with that and teach you how to do that. So.
Yeah. And with that also, I just thought about the fact that you want to wait to send these transcripts to a school until you know you're going to that school for sure, because you might be requesting from multiple different community colleges to get these credits transferred, or universities. And you don't want to be paying for that over and over and over again. So you want to wait, and it doesn't impact your admissions. It just impacts what courses you'll have to take once you go to that school. So once you've decided and committed to a school, that's when you'll want to send these college transcripts over to that institution if you have taken college credit in high school.
Yeah, and Chris, how much does it usually cost them? Like when they do a transcript request from their college, how much does that usually cost?
It's not very much. It's usually either free or up to like $14 is what I've seen. So somewhere between there. Most are free. Some of them are $7. Some of them I've seen are $14, and it just depends on that school. Like I think that COCC, I forget how much exactly. I think that they're about $7. But I'm not 100% certain. So that's another thing to look at and to keep in mind when asking for those transcripts to be sent.
And it looks like the last thing we have on here is your AP credit. AP is a little different. We have some AP classes here that you get the opportunity to take the AP exam, and you automatically get college credit if you've signed up for that. AP US History is one of those classes like that. We articulate our work through COCC for that college credit. Some of the AP classes, you have to take the AP exam to qualify for the college credit. And the unique thing about that is when you take an AP exam, you can score between a 1 or 0 to 5. And so in order to qualify for college credit, you have to get at least a 3 or higher. And then what happens with colleges is, depending on your score, they're going to award you a certain number of credits for a score of 3, more credits for 4, and then up to a 5. But it's not a universal thing. It depends on the colleges. College will vary their credits based on their own
standards,
their standard philosophy. So just know that.
And it's good to be looking at your transcripts now. So if you feel like you're needing to boost your GPA and want to talk to one of the counselors about some classes you can take, or what classes might be required, or even making up a grade in a class that you may not have passed in the past of your high school career. So if you have questions about that, you can definitely ask any of our counselors or come see me in the Future Center, and we can get that going for you and see what next steps we need to take. Next, we have our letters of recommendation slide. So this is an example of an activity brag sheet. These are your best friend when you are asking for a letter of recommendation from someone. This is for you to be able to ask someone with some details about you so that we can personalize a letter of recommendation even more. Many scholarships ask you to submit a letter of recommendation when you're applying, and the more detailed and specific letter of recommendation you have, the better. That way that they can get to know you and understand more than just the academics, but even the larger picture of what makes you you. And it helps those who are doing your letter of recommendation that might know you and have known you for a long time, but they might not know that you've done 4-H for 4 years and you've gotten like hundreds of awards in that. We might only know that you've done 4-H for 4 years. So those little details can be really helpful. And this has questions that will specify if you need it to be on a certain topic for the letter of recommendation, like your emphasis on community service or leadership or anything like that. You want to make sure to put that in there so we can be able to get it back to you in the way that you want it. Another thing to think about is giving enough time for letters of recommendation. So you don't want to be going to someone last minute with this and saying, hey, write me a letter of recommendation, because that letter probably won't be as great as someone that would have known 2 weeks ahead of time. They can really personalize that for you because it does take time, and we want to make sure we help you look good. And we don't want that to be a last minute quick letter that isn't going to help you, because at that point you might as well just not have that done because it won't be as specific and not as helpful. Let's see.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that I try to, when I get these brag sheets, and then if you can include your activity sheet too, the brag sheet has specific questions that we're trying to get more detail from you. And then your activity chart shows like the sports you've participated in, or like any kind of club that you've done, or a community service like Krista was talking about. And so I really want to do a good job when I write a letter recommendation. So like Krista said, if you give me enough time, I'm going to be able to do a great job for you. And I think there are scholarship committees, there's colleges where they really scrutinize these and look them over. You definitely want to get a variety of people that are going to write you a letter recommendation. Don't just get 3 teachers. Get someone that's maybe a boss, or maybe like a pastor or a youth pastor or a coach. So that gives a good sample of who you are from a variety of different people in different circumstances. I think that's a real advantage for you to take advantage of and to look into doing.
Yeah, one of the biggest things that scholarship donors had given me feedback about was students' letter of recommendation. So having a variety of people. So yeah, like Mr. Kessie said, someone in the community, a teacher, an old boss, whoever, that can have more variety than just all your academic teachers, because even some of them ask specifically to have a teacher and someone outside of the school system for you to have a bigger variety. And they've even said that a lot of kids get the same people doing these letters of recommendation, so then they're a little bit less unique in that sense. And you want to try to get creative with that, and someone that you really think can emphasize those pieces of you and not just someone that you know. So you definitely want to put some thought into this, because that can make or break you getting a scholarship in some of those letters of recommendation if it comes down to you and another student who are equally as qualified, but then one had a really great letter of recommendation from someone versus someone who had one that didn't look like they put as much thought. So that's something to definitely keep in mind when doing your letters of recommendation and requesting those. If you need an activity brag sheet and want some information about that, you can come to the Future Center. I have those in there, as well as Mr. Kessie. He can send that to you, so you can let us know if you need that. All right, so next is scholarship. So what this is our Kirk County High School scholarship page. You can find this through the counseling tab, which you can see right here. Hover over that, it says scholarships, or through our Future Center page. This page, it lists all of the scholarships by due date, the name of application, a link to the application, details about it, and then what grade level you need to be in to apply for it. You can even download the scholarship list now. A lot of these scholarships, to heads up, they don't update until usually December. Some of them are earlier, usually November, but the rest of them, especially our local ones that might have alterations to them, they won't come open for a few months. So don't be worried about it if you haven't done a ton yet. That's okay. I usually suggest for students to go through this and look at which ones they think they might qualify for, and kind of come up with a plan of what months they need to be looking at that, and then fill them out as they become available. And then if you click into them, you can see as well. Some of them are the same every year, but it's always good to wait to apply until you know that they're updated. And if you have questions about that, you can come and ask us. One of the main ones to look at is Osac. So that Osac scholarship opened on November 1st. So what these scholarships are, it's a state of Oregon program, the Office of Student Access and Completion. They have $17 million that they award every year through scholarships. They're Early bird deadline is due in February. Usually that'll put you into a raffle drawing for a scholarship for around $1,000 if you apply early. And then a final deadline of March. Some of the requirements for these that you may have done in your personal finance class or Avid if you have those. If you haven't had that class yet, that's okay. You can still do these ahead of time. Ask you for an activities chart, which has school activities, volunteer activities, and paid work history, as well as personal essays. There's 4 question prompts on there. They're not super long essays, but what's nice about those is those questions that they ask on the Osac usually are all the same questions that are asked in the local scholarship. So I've had many students fill these out early, and then they actually have good essays that are ready for once they start applying, and you might have to alter them a little bit, but you have a good base, which is really nice that you don't have to recreate the wheel every time of applying for these. The Osac scholarship is also where you can find the Oregon Promise. And if you have questions about this, there's not going to be 600 scholarships that you qualify for as a Kirk County student because it's all for the state of Oregon, but there are specific ones to Kirk County. So if you have questions on how to find those, you can always ask me, and we can look at that together. Make sure you don't miss any.
So can they use the activities chart that they use for the OSAC for their own other scholarships? Can they just use the same one?
Yeah, so the Osac does have you enter it into their website, but it's good to have it ready. So you actually can make that on your own and just copy and paste it into the Osac. And yes, you can use that same activities chart for multiple because many of them want you to have that same format. I suggest that students usually make them on their computer and then paste it into the Osac website because it's a template and you can't save it. You can paste into it. So it's good to start it early and think about any activities you've done. Like it said, school activities, volunteers. So it could even be babysitting, fundraisers for sports that you have to do, but you want to do, volunteering in any capacity. School activities, like if you're part of ASB, leadership, being an aide for a teacher, a counseling office aide, all these different options. So it's getting creative in that. And you can always ask if you think that that would qualify for an activities chart. You can check with us. Let's see. Next, these are some just Osac updates and deadlines. So the FAFSA opens every year on October 1st. So that has opened and you can apply for that. The Osac scholarships are now open on November 1st. Then the early bird deadline that I spoke about before, which is February 15th. Final deadline for the Osac is March 1st. And then for the Oregon Promise, the final deadline is June 1st. These can be found also in the Future Center and also on our scholarship page that we showed a second ago. Another scholarship opportunity is the Kirk County Foundation. So they have thousands of dollars in scholarships. They have lots and lots of money that they love to give to our Kirk County students. And there's so many different kinds for students going to trades, going into vocational school, going to traditional college. There's so many different opportunities. Even students who want to work while going to school, there's specific ones for that. Common application, it's really great. There's so many opportunities for students to get some funding. But you can also find this on the scholarship page. This is something just that we highlight because they have so many local scholarships that they want to help support students. So we want to make sure you're taking advantage of that because sometimes students just, if they don't apply, then that money just sits there and we want students to be able to get that. And a lot of the time it doesn't require a ton of extra effort. You might have already written these essays like we talked about before. You might not even need an essay. It can even help pay for like tools if you're going to an apprenticeship. It's not just for tuition. It could be like housing, it could be books. There's all these different options. So you want to make sure you're putting in a little bit of effort. And what I've heard before in one of my interviews with someone for a scholarship was it's a lot of money you're going to make per hour filling out these applications if you were to get them. So it is worth your time.
You mentioned one thing that's important to note. The Kirk County Foundation, like they have scholarships for students, like Krista said, that are doing like a trade. Sometimes when you think scholarship, it's like I have to go to a four-year college or I have to go to community college, and that's not the case. If you're just going to do a trade school, you can still get scholarships for that. The same for the FAFSA. You can still get federal grant money to help pay for trade school. It's not always the case for every single one of them, but there's more than you think. So don't discount filling out your FAFSA just because you're not going to go to a community college or a four-year college. Same with this Kirk County Foundation. They have a number of scholarships that are for kids that want to do a trade, not traditional school. So just remember that.
Yeah, and we definitely want like more students to apply because the more students that apply, the more opportunities for scholarship in the future, which is really great. And many of these you can renew them every year. So it's not just one time and you're done. You can get them multiple years in a row if you apply. So it's definitely worth your time. Alrighty, so next is the Oregon Promise that we've been talking about. So what this is an exciting opportunity for high school graduates or GED recipients to have most, if not all, of their community college tuition paid for through the state of Oregon. Basically, you have to have a 2.5 GPA or higher, or meet all of the pass requirements for the GED, and be an Oregon resident for 12 months before attending school. Also, provide your transcripts to prove your 2.5 GPA. So on here on the left-hand side, it does show some, I'm graduating during this time and the deadline to apply, and you must start. This is important to look at because if you plan to graduate early, you might have to attend school early. Usually that's not the case if you plan to graduate on time in June with everybody else in that normal graduation time. But if you were to graduate like first trimester, you might have to go to school in the spring. So that's something to pay attention to if you're planning to graduate early or have questions about that. And if you don't qualify for this because of your income is too high, because sometimes they do have an income cap. So most students have been able to get the Oregon Promise. But if you are denied, we do have an option through the high school that we'll talk about in a second. That's why it's important to keep that 2.5 GPA or above, because you can have this great opportunity, and it pays for up to a 2-year degree at any Oregon community college. So even if you're going to that school for something that's a trade or a certificate, it'll be paying for up to a 2-year degree, which just means up to that many credits at that community college. And that can pay for almost all of it, which is really awesome. Usually it pays for everything, just doesn't pay for books. It just pays for your tuition.
So does that like if you were to scroll over here on that one sheet, Carissa, where it talks about the deadline. So what she's talking about is if you graduate between July 1st right there and November 30th. So for us, that's not possible because our first trimester ends December 3rd. But if you look down in the next part, which is October 1st through February 29th, that's what she's talking about. So if you were to graduate first trimester, you would have to attend in the spring at an Oregon community college. So that could be significant. If you're not planning on attending college until the fall of the next year, then you would probably want to still take a class and not officially graduate until would be between March 1st and June 30th, because then the deadline is July 10th.
Yep. And that's something to keep in mind when you are planning to do your FAFSA. You have to have your FAFSA done for this. If you plan to take a gap year, this will not qualify for you anymore. And that's why they want you to go in spring. And that's because they want you to go the term after graduation. So when you're graduating in June, it doesn't pay for the summer. So that's why you go in fall. So when you're graduating, you know, in the fall or winter, it wants you to go in the spring so that you can be going the term after graduation. And if you take a term off, that's just their requirement. You have to go straight after. So that's something to keep in mind when you're planning on if you're going to graduate early. We definitely want to have this in mind. And we have these in the Future Center that you can come look at if you have questions or if you want to know more information, you can come check that out. So
students who graduate or go to Pioneer School,
yes, can
also qualify for this as well, right?
Yes. Yep. So you don't have to just have a traditional high school diploma, or, you know, you can have a GED, you can have an alternative diploma, all those. You just have to be able to have some form of like that you've finished your education in high school. So GED or high school diploma, those are your options. And yes, students who are at Pioneer, any student who's graduating in this sense is able to qualify for this. Okay, so if you are denied the Oregon Promise because your income is too high, or if you have under a 2.5 GPA, we have something called the Postgraduate Scholar Program. So this is an opportunity for students who do not qualify for the Oregon Promise to go to a COCC in Kirk County or in Bend or in Redmond at any of the COCC locations. And we help pay for your tuition for 1 year and your books up to $450 per term. To qualify, you have to be denied the Oregon Promise. You have to attend COCC within your first year. So you can't take a term off. You have to go the fall term following graduation. Even if you graduate early, that's okay. You just have to attend in the fall. You have to pass all your college courses, and you have to meet with me once a month while you're in that program to just make sure that you're on track and make sure you have support with that. It's just mostly to make sure that you're doing okay and you know how to move forward with that. So this is a really good opportunity for students if they're working really hard and they just don't quite meet that mark, but they're still wanting to go to school and have some support. This is a good backup plan to that Oregon Promise if you plan to go to community college.
So Oregon Promise means they can go to any Oregon community college.
Yeah.
But this program means they have to only go to COCC.
Yeah, and that's the benefit of the Oregon Promise. Like the Oregon Promise, it's any Oregon community college. You just have to have a 2.5 and it pays for more schooling. So it pays for 2 years. This one is a backup. It only pays for 1 year and it only goes to COCC. And it can be any COCC, but only that one school. So that's something to keep in mind where this is a good backup, but the other one is a better deal in the long run. So we just wanted to mention some stuff about our CTE programs at Kirk County High School. So we have many different CTE programs. We have 9.
So one of the things that we try to do as counselors is like, we want you guys exploring what you want to do throughout high school. And that's what our CTE programs are designed to do. So it could be that you're going to pursue a bachelor's degree in one of these fields. It could be that you want to get a certificate to gain direct skills so you can go right into the job field within a year or 2 after high school. The nice thing about our programs here at Kirk County High School is that you guys can earn college credits in each one of these CTE strands. You also get certificates when you work with Mr. Cochran, who oversees the program, and the teachers of these classes. They can link you up with these and get you in the right series. And so the whole point of these is to explore what you're interested in. We have some students who've already decided that, yes, like I want to go into construction. And so they're going through the whole program because they have plans to go into the construction trade after high school. And all of these different strands, we have kids that are committed to doing those. And they don't want to go through a traditional 4-year college. They don't want to get a bachelor's degree necessarily. They want to get a 1-year certificate program or a 2-year. And one thing nice about these programs is that they already get your foot in the door for those certificate programs. So you're kind of ahead of the game when you graduate and you can step into a program and you've already got some of the training that you need.
Yeah. Next is Armed Forces. So we have an ROTC program here for the NJROTC, which is through the Navy, which is a really awesome opportunity through Mr. Svoboda, the commander. So he's really great to be able to get some opportunities with that. But then there's also many other branches of the military and armed forces that you could be a part of. So if you have questions about that, we will be having a military night later in the year to get some more information about those. They also have some really great opportunities for scholarships through the armed forces that you can be a part of. So that's definitely something to look into if you're interested in that path. So if you have more questions or need some more information about that, we would love to get you connected with a recruiter to be able to get that info or let you know when we're going to be having that night so you can get some more detailed information from them in their presentations. But you can also talk to Commander, like we said, or the counselors, and we can get you hooked up with that info.
One thing that's neat about our program is that if you participate, you can get credit for when you actually graduate high school and you enlist. You can get up to two years of credit, of military credit. So instead of going in as an E1, you go in as an E3. So it's a definite bump in your pay. So you have to at least do 2 years. And that's something that when you do that, you have to do the ROTC program with us. But what, like Chris had said before, one of the things that we can do too is we can help coordinate an ASVAB exam. That's a requirement to see if you're going to be able to, what job or what career that you might be wanting to do in the military. So that's something we can help coordinate for you guys as well. And Commander Svoboda is really good about working with you. He's not going to say you need to be in his program necessarily. If you just have questions, he's awesome. You don't have to be in his program to ask him stuff. He's a great guy, and he'll work with you and he'll help get you support if you have military questions.
Yeah, and it's really great and an awesome opportunity for community service. So if you're part of the ROTC program, they have tons of different opportunities for community service to be able to earn those activities as well, which is a great opportunity. Next are some important dates. So in December, we are going to be having a military night. All this information can be found on the Future Center page that I'll show in a few minutes that will give you access to when these dates are specifically and at what time. March, we usually have like a scholarship season. Things start happening with that. We'll have a FAFSA night. We'll have Oregon Public University tour that's on the website. There might be some virtual college visits. Hopefully we can do some in person soon. We'll have decision day, and we'll also have senior awards night. So these are some cool opportunities to acknowledge students for decisions after high school or just scholarships that they've been awarded. And also just give some good opportunities to visit schools if you can't go in person, or if we hopefully can in the future do some field trips to these schools. But you can find more detailed information about this on our website, which we'll show in a moment, about when these are and more details. So now we're going to actually check out that website. Okay, so this is our Kirk County High School website. So on this website, underneath the counseling tab, we've talked about a lot of different things on here. So this is where you can find ways to talk to Mr. Kessie, the Future Center, scholarships, and even that transcript request we talked about earlier. But what I'm first going to go to is the Future Center page. So on this page, this right here, upcoming events, this is where you would find that information about events going on throughout the year at this high school. So like that decision day we talked about, the military night, some of the scholarship season activities. So these are the places you can find that. A little bit lower, we have some buttons to find scholarships, ways to be a part of Aspire if they want to have a volunteered as an adult, some Oregon Promise information, first year of college guide, info about financial aid, transcripts, all this good stuff, even virtual college fairs. And if you're interested in some college and career and trade planning information, this has a lot more detailed information than what was in our PowerPoint. So that can give some good ideas, as well as our past college and career videos where I've interviewed different scholarship donors and past Beyond High School Night videos, and even how to be a part of Aspire. Well, thank you for listening to our Beyond High School Night presentation. If you have any more questions or want some help with any specific areas of what we've gone over tonight, feel free to reach out to myself, Carissa, or Mr. Kessie, and we can go over that with you and set up an appointment. If you want to be a part of Aspire, you can come see me in the Future Center. We can get you set up with that. But thank you for listening us tonight, and have a great rest of your evening.
See you guys.